Hi, I'm Marcelina Haftka, and I'm going to talk about legacy content from various perspectives. By content, I mean mainly documentation and anything that goes along. So, this is Luna. I am her human and servant. So, as every cat, she's very independent and very original. So, Luna's behavior, look, and feel are not the behavior look and feel of the cats you know, or possibly not. I'm not going to make any official statements. I'm not going to talk about any theories. I am just going to present my personal experience in translation, localization, and technical writing. I'm going to talk briefly about what to do when you're facing a legacy documentation challenge and what can you do with the legacy documentation when we have some more time, more budget, more willingness. Now, once we arrive to a new company or once we arrive to a company that didn't have any tech writers before, or sometimes we need to tackle an old product that was already forgotten, we need to do something with the documentation, which may sound obsolete, old, and not really useful. So the first method, the first thought is to destroy everything and create brand new documentation from scratch. This might sound the easiest thing to do. Now, this gives you a lot of opportunities. You can start from a blank page. Yeah, you can create the entire documentation strategy, the information architecture. You can introduce your own style. You can be the creator, the author. However, in most cases, this will mean so much time, and usually it will end up with a very down to earth argument, restricted budget. So, what are other options? Method number two, review, correct, update. Now, this might also sound easy, but you need to think about translation and localization. If your documentation is translated or has been or was translated a long time ago, and you want to update your existing documentation in the source language, you need to think about what will happen next. Because if your translation process includes sending the old documents or the updated documents to your translators and to your localization partners, this will mean that each and every sign, each and every letter or dot that you change in the source language, in the source text, in the original text, will be shown as a change for the translators, for the localization companies. And they will have to retranslate the sentences. Sometimes the translation tools will show there's a 70% similarity or only 50% similarity between the old sentence and the new sentence. And this might cost you a lot. So when you think about this, sometimes it might be more reasonable just to write something new and leave those old documents be there, written as they are, translated as they are. So if ever you decide to review and update, please bear this translation and localization in mind, because you may think that you change just a typo here and there, but it can mean a lot of money spent on updating the texts for a given locale. So what's the third option? If we don't destroy everything, if we don't review and retranslate, re-localize everything, what can we do? Now, A software developer, Martin Fowler, an Englishman in the USA, went to Australia for holidays once. And he visited forests on Queensland coast, and he saw those magnificent strangler figs over there. And in 2004, he published a post on his blog, Strangler Fig Application. Now, he was thinking about rewriting code for the entire system, but actually, I believe it can be really feasible and sensible to do the Strangler Fig documentation. Now, what's special about Strangler figs? They usually find a host tree and they start to outcompete the host tree. So the roots compete with each other, and usually after some time the host tree dies. But during some time they live together, and Strangler fig can protect its host against cyclones. It can also protect animals that try to hide somewhere from some dangerous things, or humans maybe. So they live a kind of symbiosis for a certain time. And the strangler fig is not at all dependent of the host tree as far as the nutrition is concerned. So they coexist for a certain time, and bit by bit, the strangler fig grows and grows and grows, and the host tree disappears. So this is what we can do with the documentation. Instead, of destroying everything or just checking and rereading stuff, although it's easier to review other authors' mistakes, let's say, than to spot your own error somewhere. But still, this requires plenty of time. And with this Strangler pattern, we can introduce new documents. We can make our users get used to new branding, new features, and more often the releases are, the better the documentation will be, and the more often it will be introduced. So I think this is a method that would be most technical writers and reviewers friendly. Now, once we decided what to do with the legacy documentation, even if we want to destroy everything, there are some things we can still do with all these old obsolete documents. Now, I will speak briefly about 3 alternatives. So the first alternative is an external documentation audit. You can hire someone to look at your documentation, to have a general view, to check whether all the standards are there, whether all the requirements are met. There are special companies that can verify, for instance, the technical aspects. You can ask an external party as your marketing department to check whether, from the marketing point of view, your documentation is good, whether it really has commercial value, and if not, then why? Why not? There are also special companies specializing. There are also dedicated companies specializing in accessibility audits. Quite often, the documents that were written 5, 10, or 15 years ago, and believe me, you can find them in some companies still there and still used. Quite often, such documents are not really accessible. And with our writing, with our products, with our websites, machine, we usually want to reach the maximum audience possible. So the more accessible our documents are, the better it is for everyone. And also, you can hire companies to do localization audits, whether your documentation is well prepared to be translated, to be localized, to be adapted, whether you provide enough content and context, whether your variables are clear enough, and whether they do not hinder the entire localization process. This is really worth ordering. And you can really, believe me, you can really learn a lot from such an audit. Now, the second thing what you can do is an internal process check. Now, documentation is like a cat, but it can also be a pizza. So imagine your tech writers are pizzaioli. So they need to know how to create good content, how to use all the tools and ingredients. They need to know what the clients, customers' orders are, or what the order is, what the customers are expecting from this pizza, so the document of yours. This is very important. And also, once you compare the external audit and internal audit, think about external audit as a margarita check. So the external auditor checks whether your margarita can be called a margarita, whether it's not a marinara or some strange thing that cannot even be called a pizza. But if your chef decides to create an innovative non-gluten pizza for dogs, this is a really non-standard product. You need to have the entire process of onboarding new pizzaiolis to show them how to create this pizza documentation, how to develop the product of yours. So this is very important to check whether this entire internal process was followed and can be followed in future for your special internal needs or internal inventions, internal strategies. You can also contact the support team. This is a very important part of the internal check because the support team, they have their own opinion on your legacy documentation. They've been working with it for months or years. They know what's clear and comprehensive for the clients and what's not. They know how clients manage the documentation or whether the legacy documentation does not really stick to what your company is offering. So this is very important to know whether your documentation pizzeria's clients are happily served. Now, the first alternative when you have really so much time is to prepare for the future. Usually, legacy content is a great thing to prepare your future document as they should be. For instance, you can see whether there are some repetitive documents or some patterns, and you can create new templates. You can proceed to terminology extraction, which can be really useful for your writers, for other people in the team, department, or company, for the support team, and for the users, readers, for the audience. You can attach some glossaries to your documents, or you can create a special site. And there's also one group of people and companies which will be really happy if you provide them glossaries, your internal glossaries. I mean, all the translators and localization companies. Believe me, they will be happy if they finally know what is this word or this abbreviation in your context, in the context of your company, of your product, of your document. Once looking at the legacy documentation, you can also use your authoring tools and your eyes, of course, to find candidates for snippets and variables. Two things. Snippets are really useful. They can make your work nicer and faster, that's for sure. Not having, copy and paste the same thing many times or rewrite the same thing many times. For variables, the thing is a little bit more complicated because you have to think about translation and localization. If your variable is explanatory enough, if your variable is just a name of a product that is not to be translated, okay, go for it. But just please remember, when you create other variables, consult it with someone knowing the locale or locales for which you are going to create new language version. You can also prepare screenshots and context, both as your, internal knowledge hub, but also as a huge help for all those translation and localization professionals who will deal with your documentation, even when they do not work at your company. So not everything is clear to them, even if they really try so hard and they are really professional in what they do. So why do bother? Why do work with legacy documentation to prepare something better for the future? Well, to make the documentation feel warm and comfy for your audience, like the electronic devices are for all the cats. Cats adore hot modems, computers, and laying on the laptops and so on. So we create documentation to help the users efficiently install, configure, and use our machines, products, software. The documentation is supposed to help them resolve issues by themselves. So by contacting, for instance, the support team, we know what's wrong with our legacy documentation and what issues cannot be solved by the user, even having read the entire documentation of a given feature or application. So if we make a great new documentation, even strangling the old one or destroying the old one, we make our stakeholders happy. And if everyone is happy, the entire company, the support team, the developers who do not need to answer plenty of questions, and the readers, customers, users, well, the product is well perceived. As simple as that. Quite often, the documentation makes also a part of some agreement or license or purchase contract. So it is very important. So once everyone's happy, the product is well perceived, there's less frustration, everyone can work smoothly and fast. Well, you can make more money, you can have more free time, and you can, spend your free time dealing with some other legacy content and trying to find some obsolete highlights in your writings and making them, perfect and just better for the future. Now, that's all from me. I think that's a good starting point for the discussion. If ever you want to contact me, please do just click on the LinkedIn link over there, or just type it in your browser tab and just drop and say hi. Thank you. Yeah.
We're getting some good questions coming through for the chat, so I might go and launch into
Mhm.
those now, and we'll see if we can get through some of them. So,
Yes.
we'll start off with an easy one. There was one about audit tools. Do you like or use a specific internal audit tool?
Well, actually, it's one of the hardest questions that you
Okay.
decided to choose. As a technical writer, let's say I'm a fresh person to the market because I've been tech writing for a company for just 1 year now.
Mm-hmm.
And there are no special audit tools. There are just reviews. And my documentation is reviewed by business analysts and system analysts. But for the legacy content, I usually do it by myself. I've got about 20 years of experience in translation and localization of content, and I've been mainly doing with technical documentation for the past 10, 15 years. 15, sorry. So I know what can go wrong, especially from this, father point of view. So not only we create documentation in one language and we stick to this language for the entire life of the product, of the machine, or whatever. So I can check it from this point of view. And as a translator, I use and I have used plenty of CAT tools, which means computer assisted translation tools, and they have plenty of Q&A options. Quality options. I'm looking at the Q&A session. So you have plenty of quality checks. You can set your own rules of whether something's missing or whether you used, I don't know, for instance, the same proper name, like the name of the company or product, the same number of times in your source language and in your text language. You can check the numbers, which is really useful in terms of editing the legacy content. I've seen a question somewhere. And yes, you can, with computer assisted translation tools, even if you don't do the translation itself, you can import your documents over there and they will show you straight away what are the differences. If you've translated a document before and you re-upload a new version of the source document, you can see straight away the comparison between the old document and the new document. You can see the changes because sometimes, you can change just one word on one letter. For instance, in French, there are two genders. And you have le and la, which means basically the. But they depend whether it's a feminine or masculine noun. And you can have the same word, like, let's say, le livre, it's a book, but la livre, it's a pound. So you change just one letter and it completely changes the meaning. And sometimes, with some contexts, with some softwares, or even with some machines, you can have the very same word meaning plenty of other things. So it's better, to be sure that once you change something, it was translated before, at least just to check whether it won't change the entire meaning of the sentence, because it might.
So context is definitely king when it comes to that sort of thing, it seems.
Yes, it is. So I really recommend, if you have some time to play with, just see what CAT tools are. CAT, C-A-T, like the usual cats, what they are, and to play just with, with those change tracking, with those quality checks. It's really fun, and it can help you a lot even if you decide not to translate something for the second time.
Right. Is there a tool that you find is really useful for you when you're doing a translation? Could you call out one?
Well, I don't want to do it publicly. They are not paying for the for the
Not unpaid promotion.
for the advertisements. Yes, but anyway, when you enter Wikipedia and you write down cat tools, then you will find plenty of options. There's also one tool which is not precisely a computer assisted translation tool. So it doesn't store plenty of things like the usual cat tools do. It's called Xbench, and it's mainly for quality checks. So you can check
Right.
this one, for instance.
That's good to know.
But I'm not paid for the advertisement, so
Oh, that's all right.
if something goes wrong, you just read the documentation.
Read the docs.
Hopefully, you'll find the answers. Yeah.
That's right. Make a technical writer happy. Read the docs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's an interesting one. Can you walk us through some of the things that might have gone wrong when translation has not been factored into legacy docs overhaul?
Everything cannot go wrong. The most common mistake is the question of variables. So there are two problems. Once, when you don't create variables at all, for instance, you have names of products or companies and you don't create variables, although you could, and then you have translators working with different language, working with different alphabets, with various, styles of writing, or writing from right to left or left to right. And it might happen that they make a typo in your product's name or in your company name. And it might not be, our brain usually works in a way that even if you make a typo, it will more or less recognize the word or the sentence.
Absolutely.
There are plenty of games like this on Facebook. So it might not be seen, it might not be spotted at the first time, but then you can have this typo in the official, documents for a, I don't know, product launch in a new country. So one mistake is not to create variables at all. The second mistake is to create variables, but not to provide context, and not to show what this variable it is about. Because sometimes, you just put a tag or, a symbol of a variable, but the entire thing is hidden to the translator. So they don't know whether it's the name of a product, of a company, of, I don't know, some software or some proprietary method or something like this.
Sure.
So this is important. And basically anything, as I said about this le livre and la livre in French, you may, change just one letter because you're thinking, okay, it's good enough, and then you don't inform I don't know, the localization partner that you've changed something, and they do not update your localization. So there are plenty of things like this. If you are more interested in the details, how to prepare localization documents for localization, or what to think about when you want to localize your content, you can find my video on YouTube. I was talking about this 2 years ago at another conference.
Good.
So
We'll have to go and check that one out.
you can find it, because apparently it was eye-opening in some bits, because those are details that the translators struggle every day with, but details that's quite often people who are not involved in the localization company context, quite often they don't even think about them.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Yeah, it's definitely, if you're not dealing with it each and every day, it's something
yes,
that's
so it's not obvious. Yes, it's not obvious, or you don't even think this thing might be a problem to someone, or might, cause a huge 1 week discussion with plenty of stakeholders. It happened really. One of my serious, well, it was serious in the terms of time problems. I was updating localization for a software, and the client decided to put a variable over there, just didn't tell me first what it was. After 2 days, I learned it was the name of the country. And the name of the country, which means a name of any country that the client would like to put there.
Oh,
The thing
right.
is that in Polish, it existed in a sentence, and in Polish we have declensions, which means we have 14 different forms for every
Oh,
noun,
wow.
depending on whether it's singular or plural, whether we use it at the beginning of the sentence or in some other place, depending on the what's around this noun. So if you put a variable for a usual noun, then we've got the problem. And it was really hard, and it took over a week to get to the point where the client decided they don't want to take this variable away. So instead of let's say let's go to I don't know, let's go to Australia, the Polish sentence said, let's go to the country of Australia, or to the country named Australia,
Right.
because they didn't agree, to have other forms.
That was the
So,
only way they could work around
so,
the
and
problem.
it was, yeah, and I can assure you, it sounded, and it's still sounds really awkward in Polish, and I believe in most of languages. Let's go to the country of
That does
Australia,
sound
or
odd,
named
doesn't it?
Australia. It's no one says, yeah, but
Yeah.
so sometimes, yeah. So it's just a small thing, you think in English, well, you just give the list of the names of the countries, and it's okay. But in some languages, it's not okay at
That's a
all.
really good example. Look, I actually think we're running out of time for the Q&A session, but
Oh.
they always go really fast. So
So anyway, if you are interested, just give me a sign. I'm on LinkedIn. You can get in touch. You can write to me. Just write a small message, and I will be happy to answer any of your
terrific.
questions.
Thank you so much, Marcelina.